Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, life has a way of making you feel like you're in control until suddenly you're not. Everything's spinning and your grip is slipping. That's when you realize some things are bigger than you, some mountains are too high, some storms too strong, and some questions too complicated. But here's the good news. You're not meant to climb every mountain alone. There's a saying, let go and let God. I'm not talking about throwing your hands up and giving up. I'm talking about throwing your hands up in surrender, knowing there's someone infinitely more capable taking care of it. How often do we try to control everything, only to wear ourselves out? We worry over things beyond our power. We strategize, we plot, we fight, but it's like running in place. Let me tell you something. Trusting God is not about inaction. It's about faith in action. It's about showing up, doing your best, and trusting Him to do the rest. The storms you face, they're not there to destroy you. They're there to refine you. But you've got to trust the one who made the wind in the first place. You've got to let Him handle it, because His plan is far greater than anything you could ever imagine. Somebody here tonight feels like giving up. You're tired of fighting, tired of the setbacks. But you've come too far to stop now. Take that burden and lay it down, not as a sign of defeat, but as a sign of trust. God's got this, and He's got you. Remember, faith isn't easy. It's a choice. It's about believing when you don't see the way. It's about stepping out when you feel like staying still. And when you let God handle it, you'll find peace you can't explain, strength you didn't know you had, and a path that leads to places you never dreamed of. So tonight I want you to think about the thing you've been holding on to for too long. Is it fear? Doubt? Worry? Let it go. Let God handle it. And watch Him move in ways only He can. Thank you and God bless. You cannot achieve greatness by clinging to fear. Fear is the loudest voice in the room when you're standing on the edge of something new, something uncertain. It whispers, what if you fail, or what if it all falls apart? But let me tell you something powerful. Fear has no place in a life guided by faith. When you choose faith over fear, something extraordinary happens. You're no longer bound by the weight of what you cannot control. Faith isn't about having all the answers or knowing exactly how things will unfold. It's about believing that there's a higher power working behind the scenes, orchestrating something far greater than you could ever imagine. And when you embrace that belief, fear loses its grip. It might still be there in the background, but it doesn't dictate your actions. Faith steps in, becomes louder, and moves you forward. Think about a tightrope walker. If they focus on the ground below, fear paralyzes them. Every step feels impossible. But when they fix their gaze forward, trusting their balance, their training, and something beyond themselves, they move with grace and purpose. That's the essence of faith. It's shifting your focus away from the depths of doubt and onto the possibilities of what's ahead. Fear thrives on what-ifs. It convinces you to settle, to avoid risks, to stay where it feels safe. But greatness doesn't come from playing it safe. Faith says, take the step anyway. Faith says, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just the next step. It's about trusting that when you step into the unknown, the ground will meet your feet. And even if it doesn't, you'll learn to fly on the way down. Some of the most remarkable breakthroughs in life come when you choose to step out of fear and into faith. Fear will always be the easy choice. It's the voice that says, stay in your comfort zone. But faith is the voice that says, your comfort zone isn't where you're meant to be. Your purpose is waiting outside of it. Now I know what you're thinking. It's not that easy. And you're right. It's not. Faith doesn't mean the absence of challenges or setbacks. It doesn't mean you won't face storms that shake you to your core. But faith changes how you respond to them. Instead of crumbling under the weight of fear, you lean into the strength that faith provides. You begin to see challenges as opportunities to grow, to deepen your trust in something greater than yourself. Let me tell you a story. There was a man who lost everything in a single moment. His home, his job, everything he had worked for. Fear told him, this is the end. But faith whispered, this is just the beginning. And so he held on. He trusted that there was a purpose in his pain. Months turned into years, and little by little his life was rebuilt, not in the way he had planned, but in a way far more beautiful than he ever imagined. Faith over fear doesn't mean life will be easy. It means life will be meaningful. It's about stepping out, even when you're terrified. It's about trusting that when you surrender to God, He takes the mess you're in and turns it into a masterpiece. Think about the giants in history who achieved greatness. Martin Luther King Jr., Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela. They didn't let fear dictate their actions. Were they afraid? Absolutely. But they chose faith instead. They believed in something bigger than themselves, a purpose, a calling, a divine plan. And that belief propelled them forward, even in the face of impossible odds. You see, fear is selfish. It keeps you focused inward, obsessed with your failures and insecurities. But faith? Faith is selfless. It opens you up to possibilities, to connection, to the realization that you're not in this alone. When you trust God, you're acknowledging that His strength, wisdom, and power far exceed anything you could achieve on your own. And that kind of trust sets you free. So here's the challenge. The next time fear whispers in your ear, I want you to stop and listen to the voice of faith. Choose to believe that you're exactly where you're meant to be. Choose to believe that the challenges you face are shaping you into the person you're meant to become. And above all, choose to believe that with God, anything is possible. Fear may knock on your door, but you don't have to let it in. You have a choice. Choose faith. Because when you do, you'll discover a freedom and power you never knew you had. You'll step into a life that's not only fearless, but filled with purpose, peace, and boundless potential. That's the power of letting God handle it. We live in a world that demands instant results. We want answers now, solutions immediately, and success on our terms. We're conditioned to believe that faster is better, that patience is a weakness, and that waiting somehow means we've failed. But let me tell you something profound. There's power in waiting when it's done with faith. Because here's the truth, God doesn't work on human schedules. He doesn't operate on deadlines or the ticking hands of a clock. His timing is not just different, it's perfect. Think about a farmer planting a seed. No matter how much water he pours or how often he looks at the ground, he can't force the seed to sprout before it's ready. It grows on its own timeline, rooted in a rhythm that the farmer can't control. He has to trust the process. And that's what God asks of us, to trust Him, even when we don't see immediate results. So often we mistake a delay for a denial. We assume that because something isn't happening right now, it will never happen. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Sometimes the greatest blessings in life require the longest waiting periods. Not because God is withholding them, but because we're not ready to receive them yet. He's working on us, preparing us, shaping us into the kind of people who can handle the very thing we're praying for. We must learn that no matter how hard we try, it still rests in the belief that we can handle the very thing we're praying for. Have you ever looked back on your life and realized that the thing you desperately wanted didn't come to you when you expected, but when it did, it came at exactly the right time? That's not coincidence. That's divine timing. There's a bigger picture that we can't see from our limited perspective. We're like pieces of a puzzle, unable to comprehend the full image, but God sees it all. He's not just planning for today, He's planning for eternity. Second half poet. And let's be honest, if we got everything we wanted the moment we wanted it, we'd miss out on the growth, the lessons, and the character building that come with the waiting. Waiting teaches us humility. It reminds us that we're not in control, that we're part of something bigger than ourselves. Waiting strengthens our faith because it requires us to trust without proof, to believe without seeing. Here's another truth. Sometimes God's timing doesn't align with our understanding because He's protecting us. You might be asking for something that looks good now, but would harm you later. You might be chasing a door that's closed because what's behind it isn't meant for you. And though you can't see it in the moment, that closed door is as much a blessing as an open one. But waiting isn't passive. It doesn't mean sitting back and doing nothing. It means staying prepared, staying hopeful, and staying faithful. Think of an athlete training for a big race. Even when the race date is months away, they're up at dawn putting in the work, trusting that their effort will pay off in time. That's the kind of faith God calls us to have. Not the kind that waits idly, but the kind that moves forward with purpose, trusting that His plan is unfolding exactly as it should. In the Bible, we see this theme of divine timing over and over again. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for their promised child. Joseph spent years in slavery and prison before stepping into his destiny as a leader. Even Jesus himself didn't begin his ministry until the age of 30. Why? Because timing matters. And when God's timing aligns with our purpose, it creates something far greater than we could ever achieve on our own. Does it mean that our first reaction of something to our bodies and our stomach is going to be the starting point for mind? But does it mean that for us? But waiting can be hard. It can feel lonely, discouraging, even painful. It's in those moments that faith becomes a choice, a deliberate decision to trust that God is working, even when we can't see it, that He's preparing something beautiful, even when all we see are pieces of the puzzle scattered around us. I don't know what you're waiting on tonight. Maybe it's a job, a relationship, a breakthrough, or clarity for the next step in your life. Whatever it is, know this: delays are not defeats. Silence doesn't mean absence. And waiting doesn't mean God has forgotten you. His timing is not just about when, it's about how and why. It's about aligning everything, your heart, your circumstances, and your purpose, so that when His blessing arrives, it transforms your life in ways you never imagined. Trust the process. Trust the waiting. And trust the one who holds time itself in His hands. His timing is always worth it. Letting God handle it doesn't mean giving up. It means understanding the difference between surrender and quitting. So many people confuse the two, thinking that handing over their struggles to God is a sign of weakness. But let me tell you this: true surrender is one of the strongest, most courageous acts you can make. It takes humility, trust, and faith to say, God, I can't do this alone. I'm giving it to you. When we hold on to our problems too tightly, thinking we have to solve them all on our own, we're putting unnecessary pressure on ourselves. We carry burdens we weren't meant to bear. We fight battles that God has already said He would fight for us, and in the process we wear ourselves out, feeling defeated, overwhelmed, and alone. But surrender isn't about throwing in the towel. It's about handing the towel over to the one who knows exactly what to do with it. You see, God never asked us to do everything ourselves. He didn't create us to be self-sufficient islands, disconnected from His power and guidance. The Bible tells us, cast your cares upon Him, for He cares for you. That's not a polite suggestion. That's an open invitation. He's saying, bring me your pain, your worry, your confusion. Let me carry the load so you don't have to. But here's the thing about surrender. It requires trust. And trust isn't always easy. It's one thing to say we trust God when everything is going well, but what about when life gets hard? What about when the bills pile up, the relationship crumbles, or the diagnosis shakes us to our core? That's when surrender becomes real. That's when we have to make the choice to let God handle it, even when it doesn't make sense. Letting God handle it doesn't mean you stop showing up. It doesn't mean you stop putting in effort or abandon responsibility. No, it means you bring your best to the table, but you let God have the final say. You step forward in faith, knowing that the outcome isn't yours to control. It means trading your anxiety for peace, your stress for trust, and your need for control for God's infinite wisdom. Think about it like this. Imagine a ship caught in a storm. The captain doesn't abandon the wheel. He adjusts the sails and relies on the instruments to navigate safely. In the same way, surrendering to God is about adjusting your mindset and trusting His guidance, especially in life's storms. It's about saying, God, I trust you to get me through this. I don't know how, I don't know when, but I believe you're in control, and you set the intent of your faith. What happens when we surrender is nothing short of miraculous. We let go of the heaviness of trying to fix everything ourselves, and we open the door for God's power to work in ways we couldn't imagine. Suddenly, what felt impossible becomes possible. What seemed like a dead end turns into a path forward, and what appeared to be chaos begins to make sense. Surrendering isn't a one-time thing, it's a daily practice. It's waking up every morning and choosing to give your day, your plans, and your struggles to God. It's about learning to live in a posture of trust, even when it feels like the ground beneath you is shaky. And the more you do it, the more you'll see His faithfulness. One of the beautiful things about surrender is that it aligns us with God's will. Often our struggles come from trying to force our will over His. We're so busy chasing what we think is best that we miss out on the incredible things God has in store. But when we surrender, we allow Him to lead us to something far greater. His plans for us are always good, even if they don't look like what we expected. There's a peace that comes with surrender. It's not the kind of peace the world offers, where everything has to be perfect for you to feel calm. No, it's the kind of peace that doesn't make sense in the middle of the storm. It's knowing that no matter what happens, God is with you, for you, and ahead of you. So the next time you're facing a challenge that feels too big to handle, remember this. Surrender isn't the same as giving up. It's letting go and letting God take over. It's trusting that His hands are stronger, His wisdom is greater, and His love for you is endless. And when you let Him handle it, you'll find freedom, peace, and strength like never before. Life has a way of testing us, doesn't it? Pain, loss, disappointment. They come at us when we least expect it, shaking the foundation beneath our feet. It's in those moments that we often wonder why. Why me? Why now? But what if we looked at those experiences not as punishments or setbacks, but as opportunities for transformation? Because when you let God handle it, when you give your pain to Him, He has a way of turning it into something extraordinary. That's the beauty of faith. It takes your deepest struggles and uses them to fulfill your greatest purpose. Pain has a unique ability to wake us up, to shake us out of complacency and force us to confront what really matters. It's uncomfortable, sometimes unbearable, but it's never pointless. There's a refining process that happens when we allow God to work through our pain. Think of gold being refined by fire. The heat is intense, but it's necessary to remove impurities and reveal the beauty underneath. In the same way, God uses the fires of life to refine us, to shape us into the people we're meant to become. One of the most remarkable things about letting God transform your pain into purpose is the way it allows you to connect with others. When you've been through something hard, truly hard, you gain a new perspective, a new level of compassion. Suddenly, you're able to empathize with others in a way you couldn't before. Your story, your scars, become a testimony that can inspire and comfort someone else. That's not just healing, that's purpose. But the process isn't easy. We're wired to avoid pain, to numb it, to escape it. We want the shortcut to healing, the quick fix. But God doesn't work that way. He doesn't promise a pain-free life. He promises to be with us in the midst of it. When you let God handle it, you're not saying, take the pain away. You're saying, use it. Use this struggle, this heartbreak, this confusion, and turn it into something meaningful. And He will, every single time. One of the reasons we struggle with pain is that we don't understand it in the moment. It feels random, unfair, purposeless. But have you ever looked back at a difficult season in your life and realized how much you grew because of it? How it taught you resilience, patience, or empathy? That's not by accident. God is always working, even when we don't see it. And often, it's only in hindsight that we can connect the dots and see how He was guiding us through. Let me tell you a truth that's hard to accept. The very thing you're resisting might be the thing God is using to grow you. The challenge you're facing isn't there to destroy you, it's there to develop you. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's not the end of your story, it's a chapter that leads to something greater. When you let go of the need to control every outcome and trust that God is working for your good, even through pain, you'll begin to see that every trial has a purpose. And that purpose? It's not just about you. God doesn't transform your pain into purpose so you can sit back and admire it. He does it so you can take what you've learned, what you've experienced, and use it to impact the lives of others. Think about it. The most inspiring people, the ones who leave a lasting impact, are often those who have been through the fire and come out stronger. Their strength isn't just for themselves, it's for everyone they encounter. It's not easy to trust God in the middle of your pain. It requires surrender, faith, and patience. But when you do, you'll discover a depth of peace and strength you didn't know was possible. You'll begin to see that your scars are not signs of weakness, but of survival. They're reminders of what you've overcome and what God has brought you through. And they're the foundation of your purpose. So if you're in a season of pain right now, don't lose hope. Don't let the weight of it convince you that it's the end of the road. Give it to God. Tell him, I don't understand this, and it hurts, but I'm trusting you with it. Trust him to take what feels broken and turn it into something beautiful. Trust him to take your tears and turn them into joy. Trust him to take your pain and turn it into purpose. When you let God handle it, you're not giving up. You're stepping into the greatest story ever written. A story of redemption, transformation, and purpose. A story where even the darkest chapters lead to a brighter ending. A story that proves, time and time again, that with God, nothing is wasted, nothing is meaningless, and nothing is impossible.